Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Vijay Singh, and I'm with my new question on Bmat Section 2, Scientific Knowledge and Application. So let's look at another question on physics, waves. So look at this question. There are four statements about electromagnetic radiation, and you are supposed to choose which of them are correct. Statement number one, microwaves have shorter wavelength than all other electromagnetic waves. Statement number two, for identical amplitudes, waves with the largest wavelength transfer the most energy. Statement number three, the speed of electromagnetic wave or the speed of electromagnetic waves is inversely proportional to their frequency. And last option, ultraviolet radiation can cause cataracts. So let's look at statement number one. Microwaves have shorter wavelength than all other electromagnetic waves. Now, you need to know the wavelength and the frequency of the entire electromagnetic spectrum, because here they have given you a question on microwaves. Next time they might ask you a question on radio waves or ultraviolet and so on. So it's important that you know the order of wavelength and frequency of electromagnetic waves. Number two, waves with the largest wavelength transfer the most energy. So you need to know the relationship between frequency, energy, and wavelength. The third one is the speed of electromagnetic waves is inversely proportional to the frequency. So you need to know the relationship between velocity and the frequency. And lastly, ultraviolet radiation, you need to know the nature of ultraviolet radiation. Obviously, if it has more energy than visible, it can cause cataract. So let's go over each statement one by one. Let me share my screen with you. So, all right. So let's revisit statement number one. Statement number one states that the microwaves have shorter wavelength than all other electromagnetic waves. So this is statement number one. I'll let you know an easy way to memorize the order of wavelength of electromagnetic waves. So you could remember as red Martians invade Venus using X-ray guns. Now, the wavelength increases in this order. So technically, if you're moving from gamma to radio, the wavelength increases. And if you are moving from radio to gamma, if you're moving from radio to gamma, the frequency increases. So this way, radio waves will have more frequency, radio waves will have more wavelength than microwaves, and microwaves will have more frequency than radio waves. According to this, gamma rays will have the maximum frequency and the radio waves will have the maximum wavelength. Now let's have a look at the question. Microwaves have shorter wavelength than all other electromagnetic waves. So technically microwaves have a shorter wavelength. That's incorrect because microwaves have really long wavelength. If you see microwaves, the wavelength is greater than infrared. Microwaves wavelength is greater than visible. Microwaves wavelength is greater than ultraviolet. Microwaves wavelength is greater than X-rays, and microwaves wavelength is greater than gamma rays. In fact, the gamma rays have the shortest wavelength among all the electromagnetic waves. So our first statement is wrong. So this is incorrect. Let's look at the next statement. For identical amplitudes, the waves with the largest wavelength transfer the most energy. So you need to know the relationship between energy and wavelength. So the formula for energy is given as energy is equal to hf, where h is the Planck's constant, f is the frequency, or you could write E is equal to hc over lambda, because frequency is the speed of light over wavelength. The question says, for identical amplitudes, the waves with the largest wavelength transfer the most energy. In fact, energy is inversely proportional to the wavelength. Energy is inversely proportional to the wavelength. This means that if the wavelength increases, energy decreases. And here it says the waves with the largest wavelength transfer the most energy. That's incorrect, because the waves with the largest wavelength will have the least energy. They will have the minimum energy. So according to physics, the second statement is wrong as well. Third statement, the speed of electromagnetic waves, the speed of electromagnetic waves is inversely proportional to their frequency. So the speed of electromagnetic waves is inversely proportional to the frequency. Let's look at what is the formula for speed. Speed, velocity is frequency times wavelength. So velocity of the wave, or the speed of the wave, is proportional to frequency and wavelength. It says the speed of electromagnetic waves is inversely proportional to frequency. In fact, here it is directly proportional to frequency. The speed is directly proportional to frequency. So our third statement is also incorrect. Then let's look at the last statement. Ultraviolet radiation can cause cataracts. Well, let's look at the energy of ultraviolet radiation. Energy is hc over lambda, or it is hf. Now, if you look at the frequency of ultraviolet, ultraviolet frequency is greater than visible. You see, this is the visible light, and this is the ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet has a frequency greater than the visible. This means that since the frequency of ultraviolet is high, energy of ultraviolet will be high as well, because energy is directly proportional to frequency. Energy is directly proportional to frequency. And because ultraviolet has a high frequency, I mean, if you compare with the visible, it has a higher frequency than the visible. So obviously its energy is more. And if its energy is more, it can cause cataracts. So your option 4 is considered correct. Now, if you look at the answers, which of the statements are correct? One only, that's wrong. Two, no. Three, no. Four, yes. D. So your right answer would be 4 only, because your only statement that is correct is ultraviolet radiation can cause cataracts. And if you see E, you have 1 and 3, no, both are incorrect. 1 and 4, 1 is incorrect, although 4 is correct, but F will not be considered because it is 1 and 4. 2 and 3, no, that's completely wrong. 2 and 4, 4 is correct, but 2 is incorrect, so you cannot have H either. So your right answer is going to be option D. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Keep watching my videos. I will be soon uploading my next video on scientific knowledge and application.